Good morning. Yesterday, I issued a statement on behalf of the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance, in which I explained what the position of Areta is in terms of how we would like to support the future of Palestine. Of course, the first issue for us is the current genocide that is being committed by Apartheid genocidal Israel. That genocide, those terrible bomb attacks that are taking place in Gaza, must immediately come to an end. And therefore we support the call for an immediate ceasefire. We're also firmly of the belief that ceasefire can be introduced immediately simply on the basis of one word from the United States of America and its President Joe Biden. Israel is a proxy of the United States of America. It is a client state. And therefore, what is happening in Gaza today, the war crimes that are being committed by Benjamin Netanyahu and his Zionist genocidal government are as much the responsibility of the United States of America and Joe Biden. We are of the belief that Biden, together with the butcher Netanyahu, ought to be charged and arrested by the International Criminal Court and arraigned in The Hague. But of course, the dynamics of the power of the United States of America and the biasness of the International Criminal Court has prevented that from happening. We will continue to make that call. But first and foremost, now is the time for a fully fledged ceasefire to be announced. Beyond that, Areta has stated 4 points of what we support for the future of Palestine. First, we say that the so-called two-state solution is ahistorical, doesn't make sense. Palestine has existed before 1948 as a united territory. It is also an apartheid solution, similar to the homeland Bantustan solutions that had been in play in South Africa and which was totally rejected by the South African people and by the international community. So the question arises, why would one reject the idea of two states, of so-called Bantustans being created for certain people within a state in South Africa, but you find it an acceptable compromise for Palestine? Obviously, that is bollocks. The second point, and it flows from the first one, is that Palestine should exist as a united geographical area from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, as it had existed in the past. The third point, which flows from this one, is that Palestine must be a united nation, of course, with Arabs and also people of Jewish descent as part of that united nation, governed by a free Jerusalem in a united territory. And lastly, that the ahistorical aberration of a colonial imposition that Zionist Israel is, and which it had been right from the beginning, even with the Balfour Declaration of 1970, has to come to an end. The state of Israel is an aberration. It cannot exist. The state of Palestine must exist. So these are the 4 points, and I was amazed to see that I got attacked by all and sundry, saying that this is impractical, this cannot be done. Honestly, it is the only logical solution for bringing peace in the Middle East. It is the only logical and just solution for Palestine. You see, when we speak, especially when we speak in the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance, we do not simply use words for the sake of using them. When we call for a united Palestine, we do so within a historical context. That historical context of understanding how Palestine existed as a united territory for a long, long time before the idea of a Zionist state came about. When we say, as we say so often also in our posters, Areta stands with Palestine, we mean it. We mean the whole of the territory of Palestine. When I stand up and speak on platforms, as I recently did in front of the illegal Israeli embassy in Pretoria, and I start my speech by saying, Palestine shall be free from the river to the sea. And I repeat it, from the river to the sea. I do not simply use a nice sounding slogan. It is carefully considered. It fits within the policy position that the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance stands for. We are clear that the only way that the historical aberration of the state of Israel can be dealt with is to declare that illegal, to bring it to an end, and to declare a full and free and geographically united Palestinian state from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. I was interested that someone brought to my attention an old interview with the fourth Prime Minister of Israel, Golda Meir. She was the Prime Minister of Israel from 1969 to 1972. And she says, I am a Palestinian. She makes the very obvious statement that from 1921 to 1948, before the state of Israel was declared, she carried a Palestinian passport. And she says, in Palestine, there were people of Arab descent and people of Jewish descent. Now, I disagree with what Golda Meir subsequently did. I firmly disagree with her support for a separate state of Israel and her having become, as the leader of the then Israeli Labour Party, the Prime Minister of Israel. That was an aberration. But the statement that she makes about being a Palestinian is absolutely correct. So here we are. Areta is not talking ahistorical stuff. We are not trying to escape the long history of the existence of Palestine. And we understand and interpret that history in the context of our own South African liberation struggle. In South Africa, the colonists arrived in 1652. And over a long period of time, whether it was British or Dutch colonists, also imbued and supported by French, Huguenots that arrived in South Africa and other Western European colonists. Over a long period of time, historically, they stole the land from the indigenous people. In many instances, they did so violently. The indigenous South Africans fought back, but finally the land was lost. And ultimately, that colonial state that came about through many different variations over the years, but from 1910 onwards, the colonial state, which was governed by these white colonists coming from Western Europe, stole and confirmed the theft of the land from the indigenous people. That was done through the 1913 Land Act and several other pieces of legislation before and after. Now, I was part, as a member of the African National Congress and a soldier of Umkhonto we Sizwe, in fighting that land theft, in fighting that colonial takeover of this country, in fighting the racism and the apartheid that came with it. Apartheid that was formally announced since 1948 by the then National Party that came into power. I fought all of it. I joined the armed wing of the African National Congress, Umkhonto we Sizwe, in 1979 as a youngster of 19. I participated in an armed struggle. I planted bombs. I brought in AK-47s. I hid them away in arms caches. They used them in the fight against the racist apartheid regime. By the time that negotiations started in 1994, we were very clear. We were not going to accept any separation of the South African state, any separation geographically of the existence of our country, South Africa. The Bantustans that the old apartheid regime tried to introduce on the basis of ethnic divisions amongst the majority, amongst the indigenous people of South Africa, that they tried to foster and to create those ethnic divisions. Those Bantustans were resoundingly rejected by all of us in the liberation struggle. We were prepared to stay many years longer in prison for the fact that we refused to accept that as a possible compromise or a solution. When I was in prison, and I went to prison in 1983, in 1986, the then president of apartheid South Africa, P.W. Botha, said to President Nelson Mandela, I will release you from prison and I will release your fellow political prisoners, which included myself too, if you would be prepared to accept the homeland, the Bantustan system. If you, Nelson Mandela, would be prepared to go and live in the Transkei. If you would also denounce the armed struggle which has been fighting against this terrible, racist colonial system. All of us, under the leadership of President Nelson Mandela, rejected such a possible compromise. And we stayed many years longer in prison on the basis of our commitment that the only way that South Africa will be free is as a united nation with its sovereign borders, where no apartheid, racist Bantustan or homeland would be recognized. Now, as we stood for that, as we fought, as we sacrificed for that, I'm absolutely astonished that there seem to be some now, even within the African National Congress too, who think that a similar homeland and Bantustan solution could be acceptable to the people of Palestine. I was disgusted to hear how the current president of the African National Congress, and of course also the president of our country, Cyril Ramaphosa, was saying that he supports the two-state solution. He stood there with a Palestinian scarf around his neck. But his action was betrayed by his words, because the words he mouthed were betrayal of the most basic understanding of what a colonial state is about, what we fought against in terms of our struggle for liberation in South Africa, and what the people of Palestine now are fighting for. It is sad to see that there are some amongst us, including also the person who should be the representative of the long and heroic history of our liberation struggle, the president of the ANC, who have sold out and who are prepared to make such utterly unpalatable compromises simply because they are in the pockets of Western imperialism and of the United States of America. It was no historical coincidence or aberration that Apartheid Israel and Apartheid racist National Party South Africa made common cause with each other, had strong diplomatic relations, strong business relations, and worked together to encourage themselves and also to empower themselves with some weapons of mass destruction. It was with the assistance of the Zionist Apartheid State of Israel that the apartheid South African government managed to get nuclear weapons. Now we want to support an apartheid solution for the people of Palestine. It is a moral outrage. It cannot be accepted. I want you to listen to a short clip of that interview that Golda Meir, as the then Prime Minister of Israel, made, where she states, "I am a Palestinian. I had a Palestinian passport from 1921 to 1948. And ask yourself, when even someone like Golda Meir, who was a Zionist, who ended up supporting the illegitimate, illegal, racist state of Israel, had to make that acknowledgement, how can we today act in an ahistorical manner and reject the only solution that makes international and just sense, and that is to again establish, historically as it existed in the past, the United State of Palestine.
East and West Bank was Palestine. I'm a Palestinian. From 21 until 48, I carried a Palestinian passport. There was no such thing in this area as Jews and Arabs and Palestinians. There were Jews and Arabs.
I want you to also subsequently listen to the speech that I made in front of the illegal apartheid Israeli embassy here in Pretoria 3 weeks ago. In that speech, as I've said earlier in this short recording, I started by saying Palestine shall be free from the river to the sea. Understanding the historical context which I've sketched now, understand that I was not simply using a good sounding slogan. It had a clear and full historical content. Listen also to how I speak about the need to support the Palestinian people in full liberation against colonial oppression and land theft. How economic sanctions are absolutely necessary against the apartheid state of Israel, and how it makes absolute sense from the perspective of where I and the liberation struggle in South Africa come from, to support the struggle of the people of Palestine against the terrible violence and oppression, the terrible colonial violence over more than 7.5 decades that apartheid Zionist Israel had unleashed on the people of Palestine. How it is legitimate in terms of international law and also in terms of the resolutions of the United Nations, with specific reference also to the United Nations resolution of 1961 that grants all nations the right for self-determination, that an armed struggle can and should be conducted against the oppressive colonial violent state of Israel. That is why in that speech I say we support the armed struggle of Hamas and of Hezbollah. And we support the South African government, if it had any backbone, which sadly it doesn't have, because it's even prepared to accept the apartheid homeland solution of a two-stage and two-state solution for Palestine, which is an aberration and unacceptable. That if it had that backbone, it should arm Hamas.
We are now going to call upon someone who is well known, who has been with our struggles, and that is Comrade Carl Niehaus, to come and give his message of support.
Amandla! Free Palestine, free! Free Palestine, free! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Commander-in-Chief, Comrade Julius Malema, the leadership of the EFF, I thank you as the President of Areta for the opportunity to be part of this great revolutionary rally. In Areta we said we will only identify with those who are true revolutionaries, who want to see our country truly free and who want to see Palestine free. So on Friday we were not here because we do not like doublespeak. We do not want an ANC who with one part of its mouth says that the Israeli embassy must go, but with another part of its mouth it allows this racist apartheid Israeli embassy to stay. We do not want an ANC government that continues with economic relations with apartheid Israel. Apartheid Israel must be boycotted, and this apartheid Israel embassy must be thrown out of this country now. We say as Areta, we stand with the EFF. We stand with all progressive forces in our country in saying Palestine must be one united, free nation. No two-state solution. No two-state solution. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. We understand why the people of Palestine have raised arms against Apartheid Israel. And we say that we stand with the people of Palestine in their armed resistance against Apartheid Israel. We understand the armed resistance of Hamas. We understand the armed resistance of Hezbollah. And we call on the South African government, if they have any backbone, to arm Hamas, to arm the people of Palestine. Let us join hands. Let us make sure that 75 years of humiliation, of killing the people of Palestine, must come to an end now. Let us deliver, Commander-in-Chief, the message not just to Apartheid Israel, but to Biden of United States of America, to the United Kingdom in Britain, to all the allies of the United States in Western Europe. We will fight you until Palestine is free. Amandla! Viva the EFF! Viva Areta! Viva all progressive forces in South Africa! Viva freedom for the people of Palestine! Viva! Viva freedom for the people of Palestine! Viva! A luta continua! A luta continua! A luta continua! Thank you, comrades.
Wongela abantu ibakithi silthathile ilakithi silthathile ilakithi Sibram Konto Alliance shoot to kill Kilame pa 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 tension.
So yes, the speech I made then, the slogans I shouted from that platform were informed by a clear historical understanding of what the developments in Palestine had been, not just over the last 7.5 decades, but over centuries. And a very clear understanding that the Nakba, the catastrophe that had befallen the Palestinian people, didn't only happen when 900,000 Palestinian people were driven from their ancestral land in 1948, but that catastrophe, that Nakba, has been continuing up to this very day. And today we see the deepening of that catastrophe, the increasing of the suffering of the people of Palestine, how the racist, genocidal Apartheid Israel regime is now killing defenseless civilians. And amongst those, more than 11,000 that had been killed in the last 30 plus days, the majority had been children. So the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance is very clear about our position. We are very clear, and I repeat again the 4 points. There can be no two-state solution. It is a historical aberration. It must be rejected. The second point, therefore, there must be a united, geographically united Palestine, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. That united nation of Palestine should be governed from a free Jerusalem as a united nation, a nation that has people of Palestinian background, both of Arab descent and of various Jewish descents. And finally, that the genocidal, Zionist, racist state of Israel must cease to exist. There is, honestly speaking, no other solution. Thanks for listening to me. Areta will continue to speak the truth. Areta will continue to analyze properly and historically. We will not simply mouth words. When we say something, when we say we stand with Palestine, that is exactly what we mean. The historical Palestine, free and united, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. I greet you with a slogan that has become anonymous with the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance in South Africa. A historical slogan that comes from the struggle of the peoples of South Africa and throughout the world. A struggle against all forms of colonialism and all forms of oppression. A luta continues.